Welcome to NTD News Today. I'm Chris Beers. Here are today's top stories. President Trump heading to the Middle East as a U.S. brokered peace plan begins to take hold. Plus, military service members are expected to get their paychecks on Wednesday amid a government shutdown. Vice President JD Vance said Sunday that the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza could be released at any moment now. Mysterious white powder mailed to the Epoch Times newspaper. Is this the latest threat against the media outlet by Chinese state actors? Our guest weighs in. A new court ruling puts the brakes on the Trump administration's plan to deploy the National Guard to Illinois. We'll break down the court's decision and what it means for the troops still on the ground. The NFL's pick for Super Bowl halftime star is sparking debate. Political analyst Jeff Cruer joins us to explain the controversy.
This is NTD News Today, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
President Trump heading to the Middle East today. That's as a U.S. brokered peace deal between Israel and Hamas takes shape. He plans to greet Israeli hostages after they're released Monday morning, addressing the Israeli government and lead a peace summit in Egypt. He will be coming back Tuesday for a White House ceremony honoring the late Charlie Kirk, who was assassinated last month.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be there because I'll be going to, I'll go to Cairo. I think that's where we're going, as opposed to the place of the signing. And we have a lot of leaders from all over the world coming too. I know they've been invited. And then I'm coming back, I believe it's Tuesday night, for Charlie Kirk, a friend of mine, a friend of all of ours, a friend of a lot of the people right here. And we're giving him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
And with the government shutdown now in its 12th day, President Trump announced on Truth Social that he is directing Secretary of War Pete Hegseth to, quote, use all available funds to get our troops paid on October 15th. Trump did not identify the source for funding. A Pentagon official said about $8 billion slated for research and development would be used to pay troops if the shutdown continues after Wednesday. Trump urged Democrats to open the government, saying he will not allow them to, quote, hold our military and the entire security of our nation hostage with their dangerous government shutdown, unquote. Democrats say that any deal to reopen the government must include several priorities, including an extension of Obamacare subsidies. In other news, Trump has appointed Deputy Chief of Staff Dan Scavino to head the White House Presidential Personnel Office. Scavino replaces Sergio Gore, the new U.S. ambassador to India. A new ceasefire appears to be taking hold, ending years of deadly conflict. Here's the latest on the Israel-Hamas peace deal.
Vice President JD Vance said Sunday that the remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza could be released at any moment now, ahead of a Monday deadline. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel is ready for the immediate reception of all Gaza hostages. Under the ceasefire plan's terms, Hamas has until 12 p.m. local time on Monday to release all 20 living hostages. This will be in exchange for nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners held in Israeli jails.
We are expecting all 20 of our living hostages to be released together at one time to the Red Cross. Israel is ready. If a living hostage requires any urgent medical attention, they will be brought to a medical facility immediately. We are also ready and prepared to receive the bodies of our 28 hostages who have the living hostages after the living hostages are released. These hostages were either murdered by terrorists on October 7th, murdered in captivity, or have been held in Gaza by terrorists since 2014.
Thousands of Palestinians returned north through Gaza on Saturday as the U.S. brokered ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. Under the agreement, Israeli troops pulled back from major urban areas. Preparations were underway Sunday for aid entering the Gaza Strip. In Tel Aviv, crowds gathered to celebrate, cheering U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff, who helped negotiate the deal alongside Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump. Many families awaited word on the return of the hostages. Trump's 20-point peace plan aims to secure stability in Gaza, though questions remain over Hamas's disarmament. U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to travel to Egypt and Israel next week, joining world leaders at a peace summit to finalize permanent peace terms and outline Gaza's future governance.
Here to discuss President Trump's trip to Egypt and the historic hostage and prisoner swap about to take place is Middle East expert and former intelligence officer Michael Pregent and Executive Director of the Baltimore Zionist District, Karen Shalom-Levin. Karen, as an Israeli American, what is your reaction to the expected release of Israeli hostages from Gaza on Monday?
Thank you for having me, first of all. It's so hard to describe the feeling of fear and excitement, and at the same time, just overall immense waiting over the past 2 years. Excitement because we can't wait for our hostages to come home, obviously. Fear because we are dealing with a terrorist organization and you really don't know what's going to happen. And then, of course, the trust that we have in Donald Trump and his administration and everything that has gone to bring these hostages, our people, home over the past 2 years. And the fact that this could happen within the next 24 hours or less is just overall so... I just, as an Israeli, I can't even put this into words. And as an American who has been advocating for this for the past 2 years, the gut wrenching and heartment and excitement is just beyond words at this point.
Yeah, and the whole world is watching with you, and it's almost hard to believe that this is actually taking place after 2 years. And you know what the president says is yet to come is even more hard to believe and exciting, and hopefully we'll get into that. Michael, how significant is Monday's peace summit for the Middle East and for the world?
It'll be more important Tuesday when it happens, because we're talking a lot about everything and it hasn't happened yet. And again, like our friend on set said, we're trusting a terrorist organization to do the right thing here. And as a former intelligence officer, you never have hope for a terrorist organization. Hope is for your friends, your family, and your football team, not for a terrorist organization. So the release is supposed to happen tomorrow morning in Israel. That means we have tonight. And what does Hamas do to provoke an IDF response in order to derail the ceasefire? This is a crucial time where the U.S. and CENTCOM need to stand by the IDF and Benjamin Netanyahu, because we are trusting a terrorist organization to release hostages. And I want to make sure, we all want to make sure that the 20 living hostages are alive tomorrow and the others are returned. And then we have the day after they're released. How do we disarm, demobilize, and get Hamas out of Gaza? That's the big test. And how many concessions have we made in this arrangement with Qatar, with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, with Turkey? So there are a lot of issues to look at here.
And to Michael's point, Karen, there's a lot to go before the hostages are in fact released. Everyone is anticipating it, but still. So we're at the beginning stages of President Trump's Gaza peace plan. What obstacles do you foresee implementing the full thing, and in the next 48 hours or so?
Listen, as I think we all, as Americans, as Jewish people, as Israelis, we all know that this is phase one. And it would be silly of us to think that this is just the beginning. I think that we're focusing on phase one. We know that phase two of disarming Hamas is going to be hard. We've already seen instances right out in the Gaza Strip of Hamas murdering its own people. They have come out into the streets in droves. They are not dressed in their militant uniforms. They're dressed in regular everyday clothes, and they are already taking out people right on the street. So that is happening. That is something that's already happening. We see that happening. It's obviously not part of Trump's 20-point plan, but it's happening, and it's going to take a long time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. Hamas it's an ideology. So an ideology is not something that's going to happen overnight. That's going to just be destroyed overnight. This is going to take years, and it's just, we're focusing on phase one, which is getting the hostages home, and that's what's going to happen tomorrow, and we're planning on that.
And Michael, same question for you. What do you see as the biggest obstacles to step one, getting the hostages home, and all the other points in Trump's peace plan?
It's exactly, I agree with everything that was just said. Hamas, I've been part of this process in Iraq. We were trying to get the Iran-backed militias out of the Iraqi military, and they did exactly what Hamas is doing now. They just simply went to civilian clothes. They simply changed the name of the organization. Hamas will remain. And what I've seen from past administrations is they will ignore the armed men as long as they're not wearing Hamas uniforms. And they'll say that these are outliers. This isn't Hamas. These are other people. And when you hear that, it's not true. So that's one of the biggest obstacles. And it was just said that it would be years before this disarm, demobilize process takes effect. Well, Hamas can wait out the Trump administration. What do they get next? This is a long-term enemy. And I think that's what we really need to be concerned about. They have just seen that taking prisoners, taking hostages pays off for them. If they're allowed to stay in control of Gaza, if they're in civilian clothes or suits or whatever, then they have learned that this works and they will do it again. And they've said they want to do it again. So that's what my concern is. These are quick victories. These are temporary victories if phase one happens, but phase two is the biggest part of this thing. And terrorist organizations can wait out a U.S. time clock.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have presidential cycles to be concerned about. So, Karen,
right.
Given this longer time frame and the fact that Hamas has been spreading its ideology to children in schools, we see children with guns at terrorist camps in Gaza. How deep is the influence of Hamas on the people of Gaza? And more importantly, how can that influence be reversed over time so that what happened on October 7th doesn't repeat itself?
Listen, how deep is Hamas's influence in Gaza? It goes back to centuries. I was just watching a video the other day of Israeli kids in 1970, which is just a little bit before when I was born. And the entire video was in black and white, and it was Israeli kids in 1970 welcoming the new year, Rosh Hashanah, which we just celebrated as Jewish people. And the entire video was kids saying, I wish for peace, and I wish for terrorists not to come into the country, and I wish for my father or my mother to come back from the IDF. And it was the same wishes in 1970 as children from Israel make today when we make our wishes for Rosh Hashanah, the new year. So how far back does the ideology go? It goes back very, very, very far. So how long will it take to dismantle it? I believe that it will take a very, very long time. How do we do it? We do it through education. How do we educate people in the Gaza Strip? I do not have the answer to that. I think that it will take a lot of power from other nations, not just the United States, definitely not Israel. I think it's going to be a combination of really the Arab states, other Arab states like the UAE, who is very, very much more progressive. The Arab states are going to need to step into this one, to be very honest with you. It's a very deep ideology. It has been in our country now for a very long time, whether it be on college campuses, now into K through 12 in the United States. And it's much deeper than people think, unfortunately.
Michael, I want to get your response to that as well. How does Gaza become de-radicalized? Is it even possible?
Well, we have to look at the main players in this negotiation. Turkey and Qatar are Muslim Brotherhood supporters. Turkey and Qatar are pro-Hamas. They've housed, given safety to Hamas leadership. They have no interest in changing the ideology. They have no interest in changing the education in Gaza. They see this as an opportunity to get Hamas to survive in some way, simply if it puts on civilian clothes or rebrands itself, and we're already seeing that. So I'm not optimistic, but I do think players like Bahrain, like Egypt is anti-Muslim Brotherhood, Bahrain is anti-Muslim Brotherhood, the Saudis are anti-Muslim Brotherhood. Those are the countries that need to be more active in Gaza. Qatar and Turkey should have no part in this. I would argue that we've been in this situation for 2 years because we continue to work through Qatar. And Qatar told Hamas, don't release the hostages. The hostages are your leverage. And this country, Qatar, has paid off Trump officials, Jared Kushner and Witkoff have both received a lot of Qatari money. And I bring that up because Qatar is the reason it took 2 years for this to happen, if it happens. Qatar and Turkey continue to finance Hamas. And if they're part of this at all, I don't see any change in Gaza.
And just to wrap up, Karen, what would the full implementation of the Gaza peace plan mean, if it does indeed go into effect in full, for the Zionist movement?
For Israel to really be a safe state for the Jewish people, and for Jewish people and Muslims and Christians and Bedouins and Druze to continue living in Israel in peace, without the bombs on buses, without the terrorist attacks on restaurants, without people calling for the death of Jews, for the Intifada. That's what peace really means. And until we really see that, then I don't believe that Israel or the Jewish people will have peace. And that's what peace really means to me here. It means in the United States, in Israel, and truly across the globe.
All right, Middle East expert Michael Pregent and Executive Director of the Baltimore Zionist District, Karen Shalom Levin, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
A blast at a Tennessee munitions factory Friday is believed to have killed 16 people. Here's the local county sheriff, Chris Davis, speaking.
I can tell you at this time we have not located any survivors, and we are making the assumption that all are deceased at this time.
A before and after photo of the blast shows the site has been reduced to rubble. The plant supplies and researches explosives for the military. It's about 50 miles southwest of Nashville. The cause of the blast is not yet known. Investigators are combing the property foot by foot, searching for possible evidence. Officials are now in the process of identifying the remains. Davis said it could be days, weeks, or even months before foul play is ruled out. Accurate Energetic Systems, which runs the plant, has suspended its operations. In 2019, the company was fined by the U.S. Department of Labor for violating policies meant to protect workers from exposure to hazardous chemicals. A local county sheriff asked the public to pray for the families of the victims and the first responders. A shocking scene out of Southern California, a helicopter suddenly spinning out of control over Huntington Beach on Saturday. The footage here shows the chopper twirling in midair before crashing into a line of palm trees near Pacific Coast Highway, sending beachgoers running. Fire officials say 5 people were injured, with 2 of them inside the helicopter, but all were pulled from the wreckage alive. 3 others on the ground were also taken to the hospital. Investigators haven't said what caused the crash, but the helicopter was linked to a Cars and Choppers fundraiser scheduled for today. Washington responded with strong measures to push back against what it described as China's economic attack after China suddenly expanded its export bans on critical materials. On Sunday, China's Ministry of Commerce issued an urgent response. Analysts believe this was a tactical retreat by Beijing. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce issued its first direct response on Sunday since Beijing's escalation of rare earth export restrictions on October 9th. The statement emphasized that China's export controls are not export bans, downplaying the impact and suggesting that the new measures would have only limited consequences. This response came after the U.S. pushed back by announcing an additional 100% tariff on Chinese exports and introducing new export controls on critical software set to take effect on November 1st. Taiwanese political commentator Wang Hao interpreted Beijing's remarks as a tactical retreat. He believes Chinese leaders realized the situation could spiral out of control, prompting them to quickly ease tensions by softening their tone in hopes of gaining some breathing room. However, he adds that China is unlikely to give up its key bargaining chip, rare earths. For now, the U.S. and China appear to be in a phase of mutual testing, probing each other's positions. China, which introduced export restrictions on rare earths in April, has abruptly escalated its controls on critical mineral exports recently. This may have opened the doors to closer critical minerals collaboration between Australia and the United States. Australia is moving toward a proposed critical minerals agreement with the United States. According to The Age, The government officials are currently in talks with domestic mining companies and are considering setting mandatory floor prices for key mineral exports. As one of the world's leading producers of rare earths, lithium and cobalt, Australia is well positioned to ramp up its exports amid growing global demand. Tighter Chinese controls have opened a window for Australia to play a larger role in global supply chains, potentially pushing down prices and weakening China's dominance in setting global benchmarks. However, a key challenge remains. Nearly 90% of rare earth refining capacity is still concentrated in China, posing major obstacles to Western efforts to secure independent supply chains. In early September, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and U.S. President Donald Trump discussed critical minerals and China-related issues during a phone call. Shortly afterward, executives from 15 Australian mining companies, including Australian Strategic Materials, Ionic Rare Earths, and International Graphite, visited the U.S. to explore opportunities for establishing processing facilities. Prime Minister Albanese announced a national critical minerals stockpile strategy following China's export restrictions introduced in April. The plan includes approximately $800 million in government funding. As part of the initiative, Australia is willing to sell shares in a strategic reserve of critical minerals to allies to reduce their reliance on China. Albanese is scheduled to meet President Trump in Washington on October 20th and hopes to secure the deal before the meeting. Mysterious white powder mailed to the Epoch Times newspaper. The package had Chinese postal markings on it. At the same time, Chinese threat actors have been stepping up their intimidation campaign against the newspaper, known for covering atrocities committed by the Chinese regime. Casey Fleming, National Security Advisor and CEO of Black Ops Partners, joins us now for analysis. Casey, it's good to have you back. Is the white powder package another threat against the Epoch Times by Chinese state actors?
100%. It's part of what they do. They see the Epoch Times, the Falun Gong, as threats to their own rule and their own credibility. You can't have in their mind, you can't have an organization that represents Chinese heritage and Chinese history be anti-CCP or reject the CCP. That means that it weakens their entire platform. So it's a thorn in the CCP side to have Epoch Times and Falun Gong doing so well.
And how big of a threat is the Epoch Times to the CCP?
It's just a thorn in their side. The threat is it weakens their narrative and in some cases destroys their narrative. That Epoch Times and Falun Gong are under a free nation, under capitalism, under liberty, and all those things are not congruent with Chinese communism.
And Casey, the Epoch Times recently received an email with a screenshot of a White House contact form filled out with the Epoch Times' contact info. We also know social media accounts have been set up impersonating Epoch Times leadership. What's the impact of this kind of impersonation approach?
It's just an ongoing needling, ongoing to try to destroy the credibility of the Epoch Times, which will take quite a bit to do. But they do the same thing with the intimidation of Shen Yun, with all the different things, the bomb threats, the white powders, the threats to family, murder, all those type of things. So it's just an intimidation campaign that will continue. It will get, in my opinion, it will get much worse before it gets better. All of us that are out here identifying the CCP and their true strategy to destroy the West they're trying to discredit all of them, intimidate them, and all of us to change our tune and to change our tactics and become one with the CCP, which I know will never happen.
Explain more about their strategy to destroy the West, as you called it. How does the attack on the Epoch Times fit into that?
Well, it's the overall strategy of the CCP is called unrestricted warfare. And unrestricted warfare takes every method available and weakens the enemy from within. And that's been going on for decades inside the U.S. and in the rest of the free world, but more intensely inside the U.S. So it's meant to weaken every bit of the economy, of the human fiber, the human will to fight, the human will to reproduce. It's meant to absolutely weaken every segment from every angle of your enemy. So in fact, they still follow Sun Tzu, that they say, hey, Sun Tzu says, win the war without firing a shot. And that's what they're trying to do with all these different things. You've heard of fentanyl. Well, that's drug warfare or drug war. You've heard of TikTok. That's cognitive war. There's all these different methods. There's actually over 150 of those methods that are used to weaken the U.S. And in fact, Xi Jinping came out about 3 years ago and said, we will weaponize everything we possibly can against the West. So, even when you're looking at technology is excellent. It's meant to make the world a better place and simplify the world, make it more productive. But every type of technology also has a double-edged sword. It can be used against the people who developed it, can be used against your enemy, and weaponized. And virtually everything can be food can be weaponized, medicine can be weaponized, whether destroying the actual unit, the medicine or vaping materials, but also from an economic standpoint. So it's all these different layers of unrestricted warfare.
And Casey, what you're saying is, of course, very concerning to American citizens. We've seen this federal government under Trump crack down on drug cartels, especially in off the coast of Venezuela, as now Antifa as well. Could we see a similar strong approach to the transnational repression of Falun Gong practitioners and organizations they start, like the Epoch Times?
Yes, you saw that about a year and a half ago. Congress issued a law supporting the Falun Gong and Epoch Times and so on. But you're seeing just this ongoing threat and drumbeat against capitalism and against the West to weaken the West and fully take over the West, including the United States, of course. So it's very concerning. They've been doing it for years. Our government experts, our government leaders have been duped. And I think in the last week, when we saw that they're withholding all rare earths, and that is it's a flowing and a developing story. But the point is, they showed you their true cards. The CCP said, hey, we've got the rare earths. We're not going to share them. We're going to shut them down to the United States and the rest of the free world. And, they made that move, and people need to understand that. So it's very serious. And what I tell people is, you're in World War III today. And this is what World War III looks like, with all these different methods of unrestricted warfare. And all these partnerships against the United States. You mentioned going after drug cartels, terrorists, and so on. The Chinese Communist Party are the grand puppet masters over Russia, Iran, Pakistan, North Korea. And under Iran controls the terrorist organizations. And the CCP also has strategic partnerships, or a strategic partnership with the drug cartels. So all that is meant to weaken the United States. So we've got the most formidable enemy the world has ever seen. And we built that monster. We built them with the World Trade Organization and trading back and forth to the second largest world economy. So and we are not congruent. That economy is Chinese communism, and it is oil and water, and not congruent with freedom and capitalism.
And it does seem as though the world is slowly waking up to the threat posed by the Chinese Communist Party, with the United States leading the way, taking steps to, it seems, decouple from the U.S. trade system from China in certain respects. National security analyst Casey Fleming, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
A federal appeals court is stepping in, saying the Trump administration cannot deploy the National Guard to Illinois. However, they're allowed to remain stationed there for now. The Chicago-based 7th Circuit Court of Appeals partially upheld the lower court's ruling. It blocked Trump's plan to send more National Guard troops into the Chicago area. That earlier ruling warned the move could add fuel to the fire and lead to more unrest. Illinois officials had sued, calling the deployment a grave intrusion on the state's sovereignty. However, it's allowing Guard members already activated to remain under federal control until further notice. There are currently about 300 Illinois National Guard members and 200 from Texas stationed in Chicago. The ruling is the latest in a string of legal challenges to Trump's National Guard deployments. Similar efforts in Oregon and California have also been blocked or limited by courts. President Trump told NTD that he believes the rampant attacks on ICE agents in cities like Chicago are part of a criminal insurrection and that these attackers will be severely punished. He also defends his deployment of National Guard troops to cities like Chicago and Portland, saying that he has no choice but to save these cities. Here's a clip of the president taking a question from NTD's Iris Tao on Monday.
Secretary Noem saying that some of these attackers are actually organized and they're planning to kill and ambush these officers. What are the consequences for these?
Very severe. We're going to have very severe. We're going to find out who's going after our federal agents, whether it's National Guard or the military or anybody. I mean, if women raped and beaten and knocked to hell, and the same with men where they're being shot all over the place in large numbers, it's going to be lost if you don't do it. We have no choice but to do this.
Earlier this week, the president called for jailing Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson and Illinois Governor JB Pritzker. In a Truth Social post, Trump accused them of failing to protect ICE immigration officers who have been operating in Chicago. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson has signed an executive order declaring city property off limits to federal immigration agents. According to Johnson, the creation of a so-called ICE-free zone is meant to protect residents' constitutional rights. But a spokesperson for Homeland Security said the mayor's order would lead to violence against ICE agents. The NFL's pick for Super Bowl halftime star is raising eyebrows. Puerto Rican rapper Bad Bunny doesn't hide his political views. He's an outspoken critic of the Trump administration's views on hot-button political issues like immigration. The National Football League made the decision despite a recent Harris X poll that found just 27% of football fans want the organization to take political positions. Now, political analyst Jeff Crouer says the NFL's choice is a statement that the league does not care what its fans think. Mr. Crouer joins us now. Jeff, it's good to see you. Tell us more about your view on the NFL's pick for 2026 halftime star.
Well, it's just so disturbing. I mean, the NFL is the most successful sports franchise in the world. They are able to pay high salaries to their players, to their executives, because fans dole out a lot of money for these games, and businesses pay a lot of money for these suites and these sponsorships, and these players get very wealthy. But it seems like the NFL turns its back on the fans, just as the poll you cited. People don't want the NFL to be involved in politics. They want a diversion from politics. They want to be able to enjoy Sunday without being reminded of the politics. And, you know, it really started, Chris, back in 2016 when you had the controversy about Colin Kaepernick, and it's really been going ever since. And I think it's unfortunate. It's really an insult to the fans that don't want it. And I'm not talking about liberals or conservatives, Democrats or Republicans. I'm just talking about they just don't want the politics, but they keep doing it with their actions and their choices for entertainment.
Now, the politicization of the NFL began in force in 2020, around the time of Black Lives Matter, in response to George Floyd. Can you give us some other examples of this politicization?
Well, I mean, I would say it would go back further than that. You know, when they allowed players to kneel during the national anthem back in the Colin Kaepernick era. And I thought that was an insult. I mean, people should respect our flag, respect our anthem, not be, sitting on the bench or kneeling. Then, of course, as we fast forward to the George Floyd era, when we started seeing messages in the end zone, woke social justice messages. Then you saw the NFL agree to pay big money to various social justice causes. And again, I'm wondering, why is the NFL getting involved in all of this? And then they hired left-wing entertainer Jay-Z, his company, Rock Nation, to have dominion over the Super Bowl halftime show, which is, part of the biggest event of the year, the Super Bowl, that draws a lot of attention. And for the past 6 years, he has been choosing the entertainment, and this was his latest choice.
So, Jeff, how are fans responding to all of this injection of politics into professional football?
I mean, I hear a lot of negative response from people that I talk to. They don't like it. So let's look at this particular guy, Bad Bunny. He sings in Spanish. Okay, he is someone that's a cross-dresser. Not exactly the type of image you would think for a football league. He's someone that's very pro-transgender, pro-left-wing, supported Kamala Harris, anti-Trump, anti-ICE. He had said that he wouldn't perform in the U.S. because he's worried about ICE agents arresting his fans. But lo and behold, he said he would make an exception and perform during the Super Bowl, and that all of us had 4 months to learn Spanish. Well, we have 4 months to learn a new habit, maybe not watching this. And Chris, I had recommended in a column I wrote recently that there be some counter programming to give Americans who love entertainment and love our country something more patriotic to watch and enjoy during the Super Bowl halftime. And Turning Point has now said that they are going to be counter programming and doing their own pro-America halftime show, which I think is great. So maybe this will be a tradition. The NFL will pick some left-wing musician, entertainer, provocateur, and then we'll have Turning Point provide something for the majority of Americans. And that's the door that the NFL has left open by their choice of people like Bad Bunny. And they've been doing this for a while. It's not just him. This is a pattern now.
And, you know, it's a pretty big break. I mean, the halftime show is a key part of the Super Bowl. I mean, it draws a lot of viewers. It's a big part of the tradition. Some people just watch the halftime show instead of the game. You know, what could that mean? If Turning Point has a whole separate thing, what could that have some kind of significant impact on the NFL, or would it be more negligible, do you think?
It's going to hurt their bottom line. It's going to turn viewers away from the Super Bowl toward another program. So it's not going to be good for their revenue, not going to be good for their advertisers to have people turn away. That's, as you say, the premiere, that they build up this halftime show so that people don't leave during the halftime, stay glued to their TV sets so they can, you know, watch the second half. And that's good revenue for the NFL, keeps the advertisers happy, keeps the viewership numbers up. It's every year the highest rated program of the year, the Super Bowl. Now you've got a very high profile group going to be counter programming with, I think, more popular entertainers that are going to draw people away from the Super Bowl. So that's not good for the NFL. That's not something that they want. But they've done this by choosing, you know, a 31-year-old Spanish singing anti-Trump rapper who's got a very controversial history. The guy they chose last year was another left-wing rapper. Everybody that you know, Jay-Z has chosen has been sort of that same philosophy. I'd like to see the NFL go back to choosing, you know, stars that were not political.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certain President Trump won't have a hyper positive comment about the Bad Bunny star and the halftime show.
Well, he said,
this year.
I mean, he did comment. The one comment I did see that he made, he called it ridiculous. He wasn't even familiar with Bad Bunny, and I have to say, Chris, I had to do I had heard of him, but I had to do a deep dive into the research, and I did find out that he's one of the top streaming artists in the country. So he's got a fan base. He's got a young fan base. He's a young star. But again, I just don't think that appeals to your broad spectrum that is going to be watching the NFL. And because he's got that political angle, I mean, I think that's detrimental to the NFL. So I just think more people are going to start tuning out and saying, hey, we don't want the politics. And it's going to hurt their bottom line.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, this seems like somewhat of an escalation of the politicization of the NFL. Political analyst Jeff Crouere, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for today's news. Thank you for tuning in. Stay with us for the NTD Evening News at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 Pacific.